Hello, class, and welcome to our reading review for pages 36 to 54 in Reading and Writing About Literature. Now, we're finishing up the chapter on the writing process. You've read about introductions and conclusions. The book gave you some really good examples of how to create your thesis statements for essay number one and for all the essays that you're going to use throughout the semester. Um, Use these guidelines for all the essays throughout the semester. So hopefully everybody's feeling confident. Again, we had all those sample student thesis statements uh, on pages 29 and discussions of gathering support on page 30 and 31 and how to organize it. As I've said in the previous videos, organize your paper according to the elements of fiction that you're going to use to support your thesis. So maybe you have body paragraph 1 is about plot, body paragraph 2 is about character, body paragraph 3 is about point of view, and so on and so forth. So in your intro paragraph, you want to list that out. So after you state your thesis, list out by analyzing plot, character, point of view, and style. Readers can better understand that Mrs. Mallard's death at the conclusion is of ironic joy, literal joy, metaphoric joy, symbolic joy. Again, if you want, you can use all the elements of fiction and maybe have a body paragraph on each. Maybe you write about theme in the intro and conclusion, and in the body paragraphs, sorry, let me pause that telephone. Thank you for your patience. Sorry, I had to pick up the telephone there. So, my point being, list out those supporting ideas that you're going to focus on within your body paragraphs. Now, when you're focusing on those supporting ideas, make sure you have transitions between the body paragraphs, as it says on page 35. If body paragraph 1 is about plot and body paragraph 2 is going to be about character, maybe at the end of body paragraph 1, you either have a concluding or transitional sentence that lets the reader know you're done talking about plot, or that looks ahead to the next body paragraph, right? Something like, in addition to plot, character also plays an important role when analyzing the story of an hour. Boom. That's the last sentence of body paragraph 1. And then you move on to body paragraph 2. And then the topic sentence of body paragraph 2 would then announce what you're going to focus on. So if that's about character, you'd say, by analyzing the character's motives, readers can better understand how Chopin uses this element of fiction in her story. Something along those lines. Remember, you're focusing on analyzing the elements of fiction to prove your point. So make sure as you're going between paragraphs, you have transitions, as it says on 35. Pages 36 and 37 talk about global, big picture revision. Do you make a point, right? Thesis. And do you support it? Evident elements of fiction versus local, more specific revisions. Sentence structure, punctuation, grammar. Please make sure your sentences in the intro are parallel. Please make sure your sentences specifically in the intro that lists out the supporting elements of fiction. When you list them out, make sure you do so in a parallel fashion. Make sure, right, that you proofread your sentences, because again, you'll lose valuable points for punctuation or grammar errors, or if they're wordy, right? So please make sure that you focus big picture global revision, right? Do you make a point and do you support it? Thesis and elements of fiction. And then more specifically or locally on the sentence level, are the sentences parallel? Spelling, grammar, punctuation, word choice, sentence structure, all of those things. So I highly suggest before you turn the final copy of the essay in, you send a copy to the Writing Center, right? And they will do a review for you. We have the online Writing Center. You email them a copy and they'll email you back some feedback. Um, and hopefully you'll be able to address any issues that you're having. And again, if any of these specifics you would like more clarification on, please feel free to call me. I'd be happy to go over them with you and we could go over the book together. Now, that being said, as we move on to the process itself on page 44, these tips for writing about literature from pages 44 to 54 are extremely important. So make sure you focus on each bullet point clearly and specifically, right? On page 45, you should give some plot summary, but don't overdo it, right? Don't retell the plot or text at length, as bullet number 2 says. Brief plot summary. Great place for that is in the intro paragraph as your background information. Check out my mug. My sister got me this. I put the lit in literature. And obviously it's our boy Bill Shakespeare. Pun, play on words. So, bullet number 3 on page 45. Do not assume a quote or summary is self-sufficient to prove your point automatically. You always have to analyze your quotes. Don't end a body paragraph with someone else's ideas. And if you end a body paragraph with a quote, most of the time it's missing your analysis. Now, another good rule is to think about when you're focusing on your quotes, right? If you have a quote from the story that's 1 or 2 sentences, you should have at least as much analysis of your own as long the quote is. So if you quote 2 sentences from Chopin, you should have at least 2 sentences of analysis, right? So make sure you're always analyzing the quotes after you include them in your essay, right? To explain to your reader how it supports your points, your claims, your analysis. Make sure you write in the present tense. Bullet number 4. Make sure you mention the author by their last name after the first time you mention them. Bullet 5. I mean, she's dead, so I don't really think you know Kate Chopin personally enough to call her Kate. Refer to it as Chopin. Refer to her as Chopin when you're referring to the author of the title, the author of the story, excuse me, in your essay. Make sure, I'm looking ahead at the next one, right? Bullet number 6, make sure you put the title of the story in quotes, and whenever you mention the book, the journal, the newspaper, or the website or database you get a source from, that goes in either underline or italics. Italics and underline are the same thing. Title of articles in quotes, title of short stories in quotes, title of poems in quotes, where you got that story, essay, article, or poem is in underline or italics. The book, the website, the database, the newspaper, the journal. Make sure to give your paper a title and try to have a little fun with it, right? Try to pick out a title that has a little bit of style, as the French say, a little bit of panache, right? A little bit of pizzazz. Have it relate to your purpose. And usually I tell students to think about their title towards the very end, right? When you're done with your draft, go back and reread your intro and reread your conclusion. And usually that's where your brain is at your most creative. So make sure you give yourself, you give your paper, excuse me, a title that is reflective of the point, and try to have a little pizzazz in there. And we'll talk more about it. When I read your drafts, if there's any phrase or idea or word group that I think might work as a title, I'll make a suggestion. Remember, the first thing your readers read is your title, so it's important that it has the proper focus. Now, as far as pages 46 to 54, make sure you read these pages meticulously. That means extremely carefully. You must avoid floating quotations on page 46. Do not copy and paste a quote. You must set it up with either a signal phrase and a comma, a complete sentence and a colon, or integrate the quote using your own words. They explain how to integrate the quote on page 46. If you're going to add to or alter quotations on 47 and 48, make sure you use the brackets and the ellipses points correctly. If you're using any other punctuation marks with your quotes on pages 48 and 49, they explain very specifically how to do so. When you're quoting from stories on page 49, if it's less than 4 typed lines, whether you're quoting from the story of an hour or you're quoting from your source articles, when it's less than 4 typed lines, you, right, run the quote in with your own text and use the quotation marks, right? Set them up, use the quotation marks, and comment on the quote. If the quote is more than 4 typed lines in your essay, it's really long, it's a long quotation, and you use MLA block format as explained on the top of page 50. Set the quote up with a complete sentence and a colon so that the reader can stop and catch their breath before they read it because it's going to be long. Indent the whole quote, 2 tabs, block the whole quote, and then you remove the quotation mark since it's set off from the rest of the text. There's an example of what that looks like at the top of page 50. If you want more examples, Google MLA block format, and you should be able to see more examples if you so choose. However, at the top of page 50, there is an example in our book, Reading and Writing About Literature. Now, lastly, if you would turn to page 52, because the bottom of 50 and 51 are about quoting from plays and poems, and we'll come back to those when we write about plays and poems. For now, I just want everybody to reflect back on these final bullet points before you turn in your final draft to make sure you avoided any of these mistakes. So the final tips for quoting on page 52, make sure you double check the wording, spelling, and punctuation, right? Never assume a quote is self-explanatory. Make sure you comment on your quotes. Do not end a paragraph with a quote. 3, the first bullet at the top of page 53. If you're quoting a character, Louise Mallard, don't confuse her with Kate Chopin. Don't confuse Shakespeare with Hamlet, right? Louise Mallard is the character in the story. Kate Chopin is the author, right? And then obviously you have your manuscript form put in the top left-hand corner, just like I did on the précis, right? Remember that sample précis I included on day 2 on Who Cares If Johnny Can't Read, right? Your name, the class, my name, and the date in the upper left-hand corner. Then center your title. Everything's double space after your title, indent 5 spaces, and begin typing paragraph 1. In the upper right-hand corner of each page, make sure you put your last name and the page number as well as indicated at the top of page 54. I hope this review was helpful. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to give me a ring. Stay tuned, more to come.